There is a movement going around saying that the Jews in Israel right now are not really the true Israelites, God's chosen people. Can you please explain if this is true and who the true Israelites are? And does this matter since the Bible says that as believers we are grafted in?
Yeah. Yeah. So we want to be careful with that. And we want to be careful both ways with it. So here's what we know is that people will say that the Edomites are replaced the Jewish people, or the Khazars, which are the Edomites, replace the people. So they get there through a polytheist side. They don't know that they're repeating polytheist doctrine here, but Khazars are Khazarians that were a division of the Scythian Tuath giants, or Tuatha Dé Danann, where some of the Jewish people went and lived amongst. So would there be some intermarriage in there? Fine, absolutely. Uh, Tuatha Dé Danann are typically blonde-haired and red-haired giants, and Horim, who lived in the Seir region, were red-haired giants, and the Amalekim and the Anakim, which lived adjacent to the Horim, were blonde-haired giants. So those are kind of the mix of the Edomites as they come downstream, and so they could be these Khazar Scythians that Jewish people intermarried with, but Jewish people also settled elsewhere in the world. So could there be a large number of Jewish people today that aren't, in fact, part of the original Israelite nation? Sure. Could they be 80%? Sure. Could they be 90%? Sure. But here's what we do know is that they're not 100%. And the current nation state of Israel isn't 100% polytheist, and isn't a replacement or an anti-Israel, as in replacement, group of people. There is a remnant God will fight for in the covenant land in the end time, beginning in the war of Ezekiel 38 and 39, just before the midpoint of the last 7 years. And then we will have um, the people in Judea at the time of the abomination at the midpoint understand who Antichrist is, and then will flee to the wilderness. This is the midpoint, just as you see uh, Satan with this great river that's also talked about in Isaiah. I won't go through all of these prophecies. They're trying to destroy Israel, or Judea, as we would understand the southern kingdom, and understand there's a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom, and the northern kingdom was lost into the Gentile nations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just the visible southern kingdom of Judea that we're talking about today. That's back in the land of the fig tree, the southern kingdom, in time for the fig tree generation. You have God protecting them from Satan and Antichrist trying to destroy them from the face of the earth. And so you also have lost Israel who are going to be awakened and called by name in the end time, probably by the 144,000. The
Mm-hmm.
firstborn, as the Old Testament says, he reserved the firstborn for himself. So that's probably where the 144,000 come from. Just like the two witnesses have to suffer the first death, and the 144,000 are seen in the throne room in Revelation 14 at the midpoint, just before the angel preaches the last of the gospel that the two witnesses and the 144,000 had taught. So everything is as Jesus said it would be in this oration before in Matthew 24, before the abomination and the crowning of Antichrist coming to power. So God will then will have Israel, awakened Israel, broken out of the prisons by the breaker, Jehovah of the Elohim, the word logos of the god Theos, and King David and 7 shepherds, and lead them in the great second Exodus to join the Judean people in the wilderness to be reconciled, judged, and their resurrections at that time as separate resurrections in Ezekiel 37. If you go through that passage, that's a resurrection sequence that Daniel 12 is talking about, because it's referring to the Judaic Israelite people, that prophecy of that judgment and resurrection. And then you also have second Exodus being talked about, where the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom will be brought into one stick. And this is before the Gog War. I mean, this is the Gog War is before that second Exodus, as Ezekiel 39, which is the second passage or second chapter to the Gog War. The second Exodus comes after the masses of Gog have been buried in the land of the covenant. So the timing sort of hits up. So God will remember his covenant as he promised in the Holy Covenant. And we are taught by Paul in Romans 11, that's being referenced here, is to don't deceive ourselves. Don't use our hubris here, because they've had a temporary hardening of the heart, so the full number of the Gentiles can be brought back in. So there is a remnant that's still out there, however many that there are, and they have their own prophetic path through the end time versus the Christians, and we should be careful not to mix up prophecies to Judah, to Israel, and to the Christian church, which you get the Christian church prophecies in the New Testament. And thus, Jesus is the light to the Gentiles, because that's the way it's supposed to work out.
I have that same contention when you have people that try and claim a promise that was specifically spoken to Israel in the Old
Yep.
Testament as though it's one you can lay claim to today.
Yep.
You always have to take those in context. I always tell people go 10 verses before, 10 verses after if you
Yes.
can, because a lot of
Yes.
times those promises, they were spoken just to Israel, or they were
Yep.
spoken to the church, or
Yep.
both.
Yes. Yes. You have to distinguish between that. Otherwise, your chronology is going to get all mixed up in prophecy.
Yeah, 100%.